Chicago, Illinois, the United Center, March 12, 1997. Thursday evening, 7:43 p.m. The arena holds 23,000 people, and every single seat is filled. The noise inside is almost physical, a wall of sound that vibrates through the chest, through the floor, through the steel beams holding the roof above the court. The Chicago Bulls are in the middle of what sports historians are already calling the greatest season in the history of professional basketball. They are chasing their second consecutive championship, their fifth overall, and tonight they are playing the Indiana Pacers in a game that matters, not for the playoffs, not for a ring, but for something the entire city of Chicago understands on a different level. Tonight is about dominance. Tonight is about proving that this team, this roster, this dynasty is something the world has never seen before. The first quarter is barely 6 minutes old when the Bulls begin their run. Scottie Pippen collects a defensive rebound and pushes the ball up court with that long, fluid stride that makes him look like he is moving at a different speed than everyone else on the floor. He hits Dennis Rodman cutting along the baseline. Rodman kicks it back to Pippen, and then the pass comes. The perfect pass, the inevitable pass, the one the entire arena is already rising to its feet to celebrate. The pass goes to Michael Jordan cutting through the lane at full speed. Michael Jeffrey Jordan, 6 feet 6 inches tall, 216 pounds, 6-time All-Star by this point in his career, 4-time scoring champion, 5-time league MVP award, 2 championship rings already on his fingers. The man who had come back from retirement, who had walked back into professional basketball and simply resumed being the best player on earth as though he had never left. A man whose every movement on a basketball court had been studied, debated, analyzed, and worshipped by coaches, players, scientists, and fans across the planet. A man who did not just play basketball, a man who performed it, who transformed it into something closer to art than sport. He catches the pass in stride 3 steps from the basket. And then he stops. Not because of a defender, not because of a foul call, not because a whistle has blown, not because Phil Jackson has signaled from the sideline. Michael Jordan, in the middle of a full-speed attacking run with an open lane to the basket, stops dead. The arena notices before anyone can fully process what is happening. The roar that was building, the anticipation that was rising toward an inevitable crescendo, cuts off with a strange collective confusion. Players on both teams slow, looking around, trying to understand what has paused the rhythm of the game. The referee closest to Jordan raises his hand, then lowers it, uncertain. Jordan is not looking at the basket. He is not looking at the Pacers defenders scrambling to recover their positioning. He is not looking at Pippen, who has pulled up near the three-point line with his hands open, waiting for a pass that is not coming. Jordan is looking at section 114, row 7, seat 12. He is looking at an old man. The man is in his mid-70s at least. He is wearing a brown corduroy jacket that looks like it was purchased sometime in the mid-1970s and never replaced. His hair is almost entirely white. His face is deeply lined, the kind of face that carries decades of outdoor work, of mornings starting before sunrise, of years that were not easy. He is sitting forward in his seat slightly, leaning on a wooden cane that he holds between both hands, the kind of posture that speaks of hips that ache and knees that have long since filed their complaints. He is watching the game with the quiet, concentrated attention of a man who has understood basketball for a very long time. His name is Earl Prentice, and Michael Jordan knows that face the way he knows his own reflection. The referee blows his whistle. The crowd murmurs in confusion. Jordan holds up one hand toward the official in a gesture that means, "Give me a moment, just one moment. I understand this is unusual, but give me one moment." And because he is Michael Jordan, and the arena is in Chicago, even the referee pauses. Jordan jogs toward the sideline. He says something to a ball boy, a teenager in a red jacket who is crouching near the scorer's table. The boy looks toward section 114, looks back at Jordan, nods quickly, and moves. What happens next is not captured by the primary broadcast cameras because they have turned back toward the court, toward Phil Jackson gesturing on the sideline, toward the Pacers players looking at each other with expressions that mix annoyance and genuine bewilderment. But the people in the seats around section 114, the ones close enough to see, they watch everything. The ball boy reaches the old man, leans down, and says something. The old man looks up, startled. He glances toward the court. And then, for just a moment, something crosses his face. Not pride, not sentiment. Something quieter than that. Recognition. The delay lasts less than 90 seconds in total. Jordan returns to the court. The referee restarts play. The Bulls resume their attack and eventually win the game by 14 points. The announcers attribute the pause to a possible shoe issue, to a brief conversation with a referee, to any of the dozen mundane explanations that make sense inside the context of a basketball broadcast. But in the locker room afterward, when the reporters crowd around Jordan's stall and ask about his 43-point performance, about the third-quarter stretch where he scored 11 consecutive points, about the playoff implications of the win, one journalist in the back asks about the pause, the hesitation, the strange moment in the first quarter when Michael Jordan stopped running. Jordan is quiet for a beat. He reaches for a towel. He takes his time. Then he says, "I saw somebody I needed to see." He does not elaborate. He answers two more questions and then the press conference is over. The story might have ended there, buried under the weight of the championship chase, forgotten in the avalanche of basketball history that the Bulls were producing every single week that season. Except that the ball boy talked. Not maliciously, not to sell information, just the way a 19-year-old talks when he has witnessed something that does not fit anywhere in his understanding of how famous people behave. He told a friend. The friend told a sports journalist who had been covering the Bulls for 11 years. And the journalist, a man named Robert Calloway, decided to find out who Earl Prentice was. It took him 3 days. Earl Prentice had been a youth basketball coach in Wilmington, North Carolina for 24 years. He had run a community program out of a recreation center on 5th Street, a program with no budget worth mentioning, no formal affiliation with any school or organization for most of its existence, just a man who showed up every afternoon after his day job and threw the gym doors open for whatever kids needed somewhere to be. He had coached hundreds of children over those years. He had coached kids who went on to play college ball, and kids who never touched a basketball again after they turned 16, and kids everywhere on the spectrum between those 2 points. And during 3 consecutive summers, in the late 1970s, he had coached a skinny kid from Laney High School named Michael Jordan. Not the Jordan of the Chicago Bulls, not the Jordan of the 6 championships or the Olympic gold medals, or the signature shoes, or the global cultural presence. He coached the Jordan who was not yet anything, the Jordan who had been cut from his varsity high school team, the Jordan who was burning with something that looked like fury but was actually closer to hunger, the Jordan who needed someone to understand the difference between those two things and teach him what to do with it. Earl Prentice understood the difference. Jordan had showed up at the recreation center on 5th Street the summer after the varsity cut. He was 15 years old, and he was there every day before the doors opened, sitting on the steps when Earl arrived, ready. Earl ran the same practice structure he ran for every young player. Fundamentals, then conditioning, then scrimmages, then fundamentals again. No shortcuts, no exceptions for talent, no accommodations for attitude. He treated the hungry 15-year-old the same way he treated every other kid, which was exactly what the hungry 15-year-old needed and did not yet know he needed. What Earl gave Jordan over those 3 summers was not sophisticated tactical basketball knowledge. It was something simpler and more durable. He taught him to see the court. Not the ball, not his defender, not the basket, but the court, the whole picture, where every player was and where every player was about to be. He described it in terms that a teenager in 1978 could understand. He said, "Michael, the ball moves fast. Your feet can move fast. But the slowest thing in basketball is surprise. You want to be somewhere before the game knows it needs you there. You want your mind to run 2 seconds ahead of everybody else. That is not talent. That is a decision. You decide to see the whole picture every single moment. You practice it until it becomes automatic. Then you become something that other people cannot explain." It was language that a 15-year-old could barely process. But it planted something. Jordan left for university. He blossomed at North Carolina. He went to the Olympics. He was drafted by Chicago. And the rest of it unfolded the way sports history remembers, in statistics and trophies and moments that people who were alive during those years cannot forget in the same way they cannot forget where they were during certain news events. History claimed him. The world expanded around him in ways that made Wilmington and 5th Street and a no-budget recreation center feel like something from another life. He did not call Earl. He did not write. He did not forget exactly, but the specific gravity of everything else pressed the memory down into a place that does not surface easily during championship seasons. He had not seen Earl Prentice in 18 years. Robert Calloway tracked Earl down at his home in Wilmington and called him on a Thursday morning. Earl answered on the 4th ring. He sounded like a man who was not accustomed to receiving phone calls he was expecting. When Calloway explained what he was investigating, there was a long silence on the line. Then Earl said very quietly, "He saw me from the court." And Calloway said, "That is what we are trying to find out." And Earl said, "Well, that boy always could see the whole picture." He did not say much else. He had the quality that certain older people who have spent their lives around young people tend to develop, a sense that the story belongs to them and not to him, that his role was the early chapter, the foundation beneath the architecture, and that pointing toward yourself in someone else's story is a kind of theft. Calloway published the piece the following week. It was not long. It was factual and restrained. It outlined who Earl was, what his program had meant to the Wilmington community, and the bare facts of what had happened at the United Center on the evening of March 12th. It did not speculate. It did not inflate. It simply told the truth and allowed the truth to be what it was. The response surprised everyone, including Calloway. The piece was picked up by 3 major newspapers and eventually by a wire service. Sports radio programs discussed it for days. Letters arrived at the Chicago Bulls organization addressed to Jordan asking what happened. Letters arrived at the Wilmington Community Center, now run by a woman who had been one of Earl's former players, from people who wanted to know how to donate to the program. Jordan, for his part, did not give a formal statement on the matter. He never sat down for the interview that every major publication requested. What he did instead was simpler and, in a way, far more specific. He arranged for Earl Prentice to attend the following home game as his personal guest. Earl was given a seat 4 rows from the floor without being told why until the ticket arrived at his door, accompanied by a handwritten note on plain paper with no letterhead or embellishment. The note said, "I learned to see the whole picture from you. I am glad I could see still it when it counted. Come watch us finish this thing." It was signed with a first name only. Earl attended the game. He came alone, with his cane and his corduroy jacket. He was seated by a member of the Bulls staff before the arena filled, walked in with the efficiency of someone who had arranged the visit carefully and quietly. He watched the entire game from his seat 4 rows from the floor. He did not interact with the press. He did not seek out anyone or make himself visible. He watched basketball the way a man focuses who has spent his life focused on basketball. The Bulls won by 21. In the locker room after the game, the reporters tried once more with Jordan. One of them asked directly, "Did you speak with Earl Prentice at the game tonight?" Jordan looked at the reporter for a moment. Then he said, "When I was 15 years old, a man gave me 3 summers of his time when he had nothing to gain from giving them to me. He did not know who I was going to become. Nobody did. He just believed that showing up for a kid with potential was worth more than whatever else he could have been doing with those afternoons. I became what I became because of 1,000 things, 1,000 moments and decisions and people. But you cannot build a house without the foundation. I saw the foundation sitting in row 7 and I stopped. Because some things are more important than the basket." He picked up his bag. He took a single step toward the exit, then stopped, turned back. He said, "The pause was 4 seconds. I counted. 4 seconds is not a long time to give back to 3 summers. Then he left. The season continued. The Bulls won the championship in June, defeating the Utah Jazz in 6 games. Jordan averaged 31 points per game in the finals and was named Finals MVP for the 5th time in his career. The celebration was enormous, the kind of celebration that a city wraps around itself like an identity, like proof that something transcends the ordinary. At some point during that summer, a package arrived at Earl Prentice's home in Wilmington. Inside was one of Jordan's game-worn jerseys from the 1997 finals, mounted on a backing board. No press release, no representative, no arrangement with any charitable foundation or publicity campaign. Just the jersey and a second note, shorter this time. It said, "For a man who taught a 15-year-old boy to see." Earl put it on the wall of his living room, between a photograph of his wife and a framed photograph of the recreation center on 5th Street taken sometime in the early 1980s. The building with the chain-link fence and the cracked parking lot where kids had played through summer heat and come back the next day for more. He did not tell many people it was there. When visitors noticed it and asked, he would give the short answer, just a few words, and then redirect the conversation with the ease of someone who has decided where he stands in a particular story and is comfortable with that position. He would say, "He was a good kid who worked very hard. I just opened the door." And then he would talk about something else, because to Earl Prentice, that was the complete and honest truth, and anything more would have been showing off. Some things do not require amplification. Some moments exist at exactly the size they are. A great player stops in the middle of a great season because he sees the man who taught him to see, and for 4 counted seconds, the entire architecture of professional sport pauses to make room for something older and more important than championships. The foundation holds not because it is recognized, but because it was laid with care before anyone knew what would be built upon it. The 1997 season is remembered for the dynasty and the ring and the legend that was still accelerating toward its peak. But for 23,000 people in the United Center on March 12th, there is a smaller memory embedded inside the larger one, the memory of a pause. A moment of stillness in the middle of a basketball game when Michael Jordan saw something in the crowd and stopped, and in stopping reminded everyone watching that even the greatest careers are constructed on foundations built by people whose names the world never learned. The pause lasted 4 seconds. Some things last longer.